4:30, near Sumy, 340 Ukrainian drones lifted off. Each drone was guided by advanced AI and assigned a precise mission. Within minutes, Russia's most sophisticated air defenses would be tested, and by the end, one of its premier weapons factories would lie in ruins. At 4:30, the first Ukrainian AN-196 Liutyi drone lifted from a concealed launch rail near Sumy. 20 seconds later, a second drone followed. Across 3 additional launch sites, 340 more drones simultaneously took off, creating the largest coordinated swarm launch in recorded military history. For Ukrainian crews, the opening moments were a race against time. Russian early warning systems had already detected the mass launch, and 4 Iskander missiles were inbound at Mach 5.9. With just over 10 minutes until impact, operators scrambled to clear the rails. Every drone they could send skyward mattered. Losing the sites was expected, but getting the full swarm airborne before destruction was the difference between a nuisance raid and a historic strike. The countdown wasn't about survival. It was about momentum. Each drone operated autonomously under the Skynodes AI system. This system processed real-time environmental data, radar signals, and satellite imagery to maintain situational awareness and collision avoidance. All launch sequences followed pre-programmed staggered intervals to avoid initial radar overlap and maintain swarm separation. At 4:32, Russian early warning radar networks detected the mass launch. Within seconds, 4 Iskander ballistic missiles roared toward the Sumy launch sites. Each missile traveled at Mach 5.9, carrying a 700-kilogram conventional warhead. The calculated time to target was approximately 11 minutes. Ukrainian operators had only a brief window to clear additional drones from the launch rails before potential site destruction. The swarm's operational design included redundancy. Multiple drones were assigned to identical routes to account for losses in transit. At 4:35, the swarm divided into 4 operational forces: Northern, Southern, Eastern, and Decoy. This separation served both redundancy and tactical deception. The Northern force consisted of 95 drones assigned to circumvent S-400 coverage protecting Kursk. Their route involved a northern arc, descending to 500 meters to reduce radar visibility. Skynodes continuously analyzed terrain, radar emissions, and signal interference to optimize flight path. Splitting the swarm into 4 forces was both clever planning and survival by design. The northern group faced the longest route, arcing around Kursk and descending low to avoid S-400 coverage. The southern group braced for a GPS-denied gauntlet. The eastern force would run directly into Russian fighters. The decoy force, meanwhile, climbed high and bright, designed to draw radar and interceptors away. By diversifying the swarm's paths and purposes, Ukraine ensured that no single failure could unravel the entire strike. The gamble would soon prove decisive. At 6 a.m., Northern Force drones crossed the Russian border near Sutsa. Skynodes detected the first emission from a 92 N6E gravestone radar, capable of tracking aircraft at ranges up to 400 kilometers. The AN-196 Liutyi's carbon fiber airframe generated a radar cross-section similar to a large bird, complicating target discrimination. Russian radar operators struggled to separate real threats from environmental clutter. The AI algorithms compared real-time radar data with satellite imagery to maintain terrain masking while avoiding obstacles such as hills and power lines. At 6:08, the S-400 battery fired 2 interceptors at phantom radar returns, what Ukrainian analysts called phantom returns. Northern Force drones cleared the engagement zone without losses to enemy fire, though 12 units were lost to navigation errors over rugged terrain. The Southern Force, launched 100 kilometers south of Sumy near Fultava, entered a 200-kilometer GPS-denied corridor. Russian electronic warfare units broadcast jamming signals at 500 watts across all commercial and military navigation frequencies. Conventional drones lacking autonomous visual navigation would have been disabled. The lead Southern drone, controlled by Skynodes, switched to visual navigation mode, using downward-facing cameras to map highways, rail lines, and terrain features. The AI compared these inputs to stored satellite and map data to maintain precision routing. At 6:15, the Southern Force exited the jamming zone. Mechanical failures caused the loss of 8 drones, attributed to accelerated launch procedures and compressed deployment timelines rather than enemy action. The Eastern Force encountered direct aerial opposition. 4 Su-35 fighter jets scrambled from Vard Air Base, each armed with 12 R-77-1 air-to-air missiles. The flight leader split the formation to engage both north and south vectors. The Herb-era radar system, optimized for fighter-sized targets at high altitude, initially failed to detect drones flying just 200 meters above farmland. Pilots descended to 1,000 meters to establish radar lock, risking exposure to potential small arms and ground-based air defense. At 6:16, the first R-77-1 missile detonated, destroying a single drone. The Eastern Force expended 32 missiles, destroying 15 drones. The economic disparity was evident. Each missile cost approximately 25 million rubles, while each AN-196 Liutyi drone cost only 200,000 rubles. The remaining Eastern Force comprised 65 operational drones. At 6:22, the decoy force, consisting of 80 older, modified commercial drones, activated radar enhancement devices and ascended to 5,000 meters. These units appeared on radar as high-value cruise missile targets. Russian air defense networks reported multiple inbound cruise missiles, prompting a full-scale scramble of fighters and over 300 surface-to-air missile batteries. 6 additional Su-35s launched from Lipetsk. At 6:30, the decoy force had been destroyed. Their sacrifice drew 12 fighter aircraft and over 100 missiles away from the northern, southern, and eastern forces, which continued toward Shahbazkari undetected. The tactical impact highlighted the effectiveness of swarm-based deception. Convergence of forces occurred approximately 180 kilometers from Shahbazkari. The Northern Force had 83 surviving drones, the Southern Force 78, and the Eastern Force 65, a total of 226 drones. Losses amounted to 115 across all forces. Remaining units retained enough fuel, sensors, and payloads to conduct terminal phase strikes. At 8:30, the first wave of 40 drones crested the final ridgeline approaching Shahbazkari. Multiple air defense radars immediately triggered. The following waves included 186 additional drones in 4 distinct formations, each separated by 90-second intervals to maintain swarm cohesion and avoid radar saturation. 6 Pantsir-S1 air defense systems guarded the facility, each with a finite number of missiles and autocannon rounds. The Lee Pantsir 1RS-2 radar operator faced a nightmare. 40 targets approached simultaneously, exceeding the 4-target simultaneous engagement limit. The first pair of 57 E-6 surface-to-air missiles launched at the closest targets. Skynode-S coordinated evasive maneuvers, preventing missile targeting systems from locking consistently. When a missile detonated near one drone, others exploited the temporary blind zone to advance. At 8:31, the Eastern Pantsir system engaged the second wave of 45 drones in step formation, 20 at 500 meters, 25 at 50 meters. The operator targeted high-altitude drones, launching 4 missiles, while low-altitude drones used missile smoke, heat signatures, and radar clutter to mask their approach. Autocannon systems joined the fight. Each Pantsir, 2 38 M twin 30mm autocannon, could only engage one target at a time. 6 streams of tracer fire rained across multiple vectors. Drones maneuvered through interlocking fields of fire with minimal losses. The third wave of 50 drones dynamically adjusted formation, varying altitude and speed. 6th Pantsir system engaged the fourth wave with 6 simultaneous missile launches. At 8:32, the 5th wave of 51 drones employed coordinated countermeasures to exploit radar limitations. Missile radar seekers struggled to lock on to small, low-signature targets executing complex maneuvers. Skynode-S had mapped blind spots from earlier waves, giving the drones a tactical advantage. At 8:33, Distributed intelligence allowed groups of 8 to 10 drones to converge on specific targets simultaneously. Northern Force targeted Building 2 KMDA antenna with 15 drones, Building 3 support facilities with 12, and the main production hall with 20 drones. Sky-Node-S updated subsequent waves with real-time penetration data and learning from earlier engagements. At 8:34, late-arriving drones adjusted flight paths to exploit gaps in radar and autocannon coverage. Pantsir crews were overwhelmed. Autocannon rounds, 700 per barrel, lasted only 42 seconds, insufficient for the remaining swarm. Over 120 drones entered terminal dive phases unopposed. 6 Pantsir systems had fired 38 missiles, scoring 31 hits, 82%. The remaining 195 drones pressed forward, forcing operators to switch to autocannons, which were insufficient given swarm size. At 8:35, the first wave of 28 drones impacted simultaneously within 15 seconds. Buildings 2, 3, and 4 collapsed under kinetic and explosive effects. Fires ignited instantly, overwhelming initial fire suppression. Debris, dust clouds, and secondary explosions cascaded, halting emergency response. At 8:36, the second wave of 35 drones struck critical support infrastructure, power substations, water pumping stations. Emergency systems failed. Backup power, lighting, and communications went down. Chemical storage units breached. Delayed fuse warheads mixed industrial chemicals into fuel-air explosions. Clean rooms containing nitrogen, argon, and hydrogen gases contributed secondary blasts. By 8:37, the final wave of 52 drones completed the attack. Fires merged into a massive inferno. Ammunition cooked off. Smoke blanketed Cheboksy. The Kometa production line, 2 decades in development, lay in ruins. Ukraine had traded $68 million in drones for a strategic victory worth billions. Even the most advanced air defenses failed against the coordinated swarm. The operation ended at 8:37. Exact, decisive, unprecedented. The strike on Cheboksky's weapons facility wasn't just a battle tactic. It was a glimpse into the future of warfare. Precision AI, swarm deception, and layered timing overwhelmed even the most sophisticated defenses. Ukraine proved that sheer numbers, guided by intelligence and coordination, can tilt the balance of power in ways once thought impossible. But this raises larger questions about escalation, ethics, and the battles the world is preparing for next. As nations adapt, each strike becomes more than an attack. It becomes a warning. The battlefield is no longer measured in territory, but in the speed of innovation. What are your thoughts? Do you see this as a turning point in modern conflict, or just one chapter in a longer war? Stay tuned, subscribe, and join the conversation. We'll bring you the next twist before it makes the headlines.